Yes, we have some books from Adam Lambarello. We even have a book or two from Rick Rosner. So, yes, you can get your books and all along those lines. But now let's get to some news that's going on in the world. And then I'll bring in Rick Rosner and Nick Palveda, and we'll see who else shows up as well. But, Colorado said that Mr. Trump, at least for now, cannot be on the ballot. It would be interesting to see what Rick says about that. But apparently, the Michigan Supreme Court has rejected an insurrectionist ban case, and they're keeping the Trump on the 2024 ballot. And we're waiting to hear what Virginia will do next, because I think that they're trying to go after him not being on the ballot as well. But Michigan Supreme Court says that Trump will stay on the state primary ballot. So it does look like he'll be staying on the ballot in that area and all along those lines. And speaking of elections, I just learned, well, actually, I knew that one friend of mine was running for the local school board, that being Wendell Tabb, and I might try to reach out to him and see if he wants to come and talk here on the news and everything. But yesterday, when I was doing the Kwanzaa celebration, and I heard from Steve Rao that he regretted he was not able to make it, and that is a 7-day activity. But today, there is not a public event that I'm aware of, so some people might just be celebrating at their home and all along those lines. But while I was doing that, I learned that a longtime friend of mine, Joey Goff, is also running for local school board, because school boards are very important, sometimes even more important than the national elections and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, as both of those people are educators. As a matter of fact, Mr. Tabb is very well known for the drama department here, and has taken that drama department all around the world and all in that space. As a matter of fact, I think they went to Australia, and I know they went to some Asian countries. And then, like I said, Joey Goff is also very much involved in the education world as well. I think that she does some stuff in the choral education, or that of music, and I think she does some other stuff also. But it's good to know that there are some people that are thinking about running for local elections. So that is always a wonderful thing. And then we've also heard that there will be a migrant caravan heading toward the U.S. southern border ahead of Blinken's trip to Mexico. So more than 11,000 migrants are waiting in northern Mexico amid the border surge. So that is something that we are seeing. And of course, that whole conversation around migrants was part of the discussion yesterday on Naked at Night with Rick Rosner, because I do know his friend Lance is thinking that all of these migrants are going to be turning into Democratic voters, and all in that space. I don't know that I necessarily agree with his friend Lance about that, but it'll be interesting to see what others say as well. But it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out and what should be going on in that space and all along those lines. And of course, there is this notion of schools drowning in debt. So a private liberal arts college is drowning in debt, and some people are wondering whether Alabama should rescue it. So I know that there's been issues around St. Augustine, which is here in North Carolina, in Raleigh, and some of its debts, and there are other schools that are facing debt as well. And I guess some people are trying to figure out what to do in that space. And this was a very weird Christmas in terms of the weather and all in that space. So even there in Minnesota, they broke a century-old Christmas temperature record in terms of it being very warm. And I think it's been very warm where Rick is as well. And a record-breaking warm, snowless winter definitely confounded Midwesterners. So they are used to having some snow, and definitely some things going on in that space. I was even watching some of the North Carolina coverage, and they were talking about people going out for hikes. And in some cases, they were going out to hikes to state parks only to find out that the state parks were closed. So then they had to go to other their outside walk in, since it was definitely around the 60s and definitely was not feeling like the 30s or anything like that. And it looks like an Indiana man was rescued from a car wreck after surviving 6 days trapped in a hidden and looks like it was even partially crushed car, and all along those lines. So definitely looks like there is some good news for this Indiana man that was found by a good Samaritan after he was rescued from a car wreck 6 days after being trapped in that vehicle. And a lot of people are saying that that is literally a miracle that took place, and all in that way. So definitely there is a number of things happening in that space. And apparently, John Fetterman is rejecting the notion of being called a progressive. He's rejecting the progressive label as left wing individuals are attacking him over his positions on Israel and immigration. So, definitely, a lot of folks are saying that he is not the progressive that I guess that they thought he was, and all in that way. As a matter of fact, Fetterman says that progressives are hoping that he dies after he rejects the purity test on immigration and the border. So apparently there's a purity test and all along those lines, but who knows that that was even existent and all in that kind of way. We can get to some world news and then I'll bring in some other folks as well, and we'll see what they're talking about as well. But Israel is expanding its ground offensive into central Gaza refugee camps, and humanitarian crisis is worsening in Gaza as the Israel and Hamas war continues to rage on. So that is something that a lot of people, including national leaders, are paying attention to as well. And a Russian drone and artillery attack killed 6 in Ukraine, and apparently it knocked out power in Kherson. So definitely that is something that's going on, is that war is continuing to rage on also. So Russia apparently has fired off dozens of drones, and Ukraine says at least one killed in the Russian attack on the Kherson rail station. So definitely that is something that we're seeing. And the jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is relieved after being fearful of the Arctic prison regime, and he's been relieved after exhausting a 20-day, I guess, prison things that he was doing in that space. So maybe Sasha's got some things to say about that as well. And there is some talk about Iran walking back claims that Hamas attack was revenge for the Soleimani killing and all in that space. So there is some things that were saying that this was a revenge for the killing of Soleimani back in 2020, but Hamas is saying no, it wasn't. So definitely there is some walking back, and apparently there are some people that are saying that is not the case, and all along those lines. And Canada is grappling with the effects of a deteriorating relationship with India and China. So definitely Canada is grappling with that, and Baghdad has condemned the U.S. strike on Iraqi military positions. So that is something else that we're seeing, as well as dozens of Russian soldiers missing after a missile hit a warship in Crimea. So that is something else that we are seeing as well. So that is definitely a number of things. And I did see something about the budget. I'm going to get to one other kind of not totally lighthearted, but interesting news story. And then I'll mention the budget, which I know Nick is always talking about, and all in that space. But apparently the Eiffel Tower staff, that's right, over there in France, is on strike on the centenary of the creator's death. So 100 years after the creator of the Eiffel Tower died, then it looks like definitely some of that staff is on strike, and the union says the landmark is headed for a disaster. So definitely it looks like it's going to be a quiet day there in France at the Eiffel Tower, as the staff is saying that they will not be working on this particular day, and all along those lines. And the Treasury says that the 2024 budget is to be held on March 6th. So I'm wondering if in March 6th, 2024, definitely maybe our own founder or one of the founders, Nick Palveda, might be heading back up there to talk with them as well, because definitely that is something that's going on. But that's actually, he'd have to go all the way to the UK, because this was actually the UK Treasury that I'm talking about in this particular case, and not the United States Treasury, even though they could do the same here in this area as well. But Jeremy Hunt is fueling election speculation as the March 6th spring budget is announced. So Hunt to announce the UK budget on March 6th as the Tories push for giveaways. So definitely it looks like that could be determining a lot of the future of the electoral politics going on there in the whole notion of what's taken on in the UK. And now it looks like a new Russian military unit in Africa is recruiting former Wagner fighters, according to Ukraine war vets. So Russia is expanding into the Sahel with its new brand, African Corps. So definitely Wagner, Mali, and Prospects for Peace in Africa. So looks like Blood Gold from Africa is funding Russia's war in Ukraine. So that is something else that we are seeing as well. We might get to some other news stories and all along those lines, but that was just some of the things that I was seeing and that folks might be interested in. So I'll bring in Rick Rosner and see what he's got to say about this lovely strike in France, because apparently the Eiffel Tower is on strike. So if you're planning to go to France, you might not be able to go visit the Eiffel Tower because the staff is going like, no, that's okay. We don't want to do that. So they're on the strike.
The French people strike a lot. It's and they get a lot of concessions. The work conditions, the number of weeks of vacation you get every year, and the strikes work.
Yeah,
it's harder to get national level strikes going on in the U.S. because we have 5.5 times their population.
That's true. But we're going to bring in Nick, who's got the story going on as well, and we've got Jacoby, and we might get to some of the other things as well. I see Lee Newton Rose is in the background. But what do you think about these strikes? And are we going to follow the UK and get a budget and all along those lines? But what do you think about these strikes in France?
Well, Rick is right. Strikes and unions actually are the betterment of workers. There's just no question about it. So for that reason, since I'm a hard-born capitalist collecting dividends and interest, I'm totally against it. I mean, why should workers do anything except live in poverty and squalor? I don't get it. And rich people need to live lives of luxury like I do and not have to work. So I don't know why we worship workers so much when the thing is poverty and squalor is their destiny, and living a life of luxury and collecting interest and dividends, which you don't pay Social Security or Medicare taxes on, is the life of wealthy individuals. So
hey, hold on a second. I just got to double check something. Jacoby, because I want to know from you, but there was this major holiday that just completed, and all along those lines. But I'm thinking that Nick is doing his version of Scrooge. So maybe he's doing his version of Scrooge. It's a day or two after Christmas. So is he being humbug to the workers? So, Jacoby, what do you think? Is he being Scrooge?
Toby totally agrees with me.
Well, I mean, Boxing Day was yesterday, and Boxing Day is a swap of basically what the workers and those they work for. And so I guess Nick is following up Boxing Day with being trying to put the workers back in their place.
There you go. There you go. Good, Jacoby. Yes, sir, Jacoby. You are learning to be a capitalist. Workers, you need to go in your place. No unions. Right to work, and live in poverty and squalor, so the 1% can live in luxury and private jets and first class tickets and all that other stuff. So it works not to have unions if you're a wealthy corporate owner. But go on, Rick.
Hey, Rick, how is that working in California? Because Rick is
capitalism is the haves having and the nots not having. We're at 94% of the privately held assets in America are owned by people 45 years of age and older. The haves are really doing a good job of having. Last night Lance has a piano in his art studio now because somebody else just doesn't like piano. I know from trying to sell a piano that used to belong to big furniture, pianos, what they call brown furniture that you see on Antiques Roadshow. The price of those things in the antiques market has dropped by more than half because younger people don't have houses because the boomers have all the money, all the houses, and there's just no place to put your big grandma furniture. And so, the wealth inequality is at a 100-year high.
Yeah. And I think that's good for America, because the thing is, if we have just a small group of people that own all the assets in the United States, that will incentivize people to work harder for less money and less opportunity. And we've been striving to get that for like the last, since the Reagan administration came in, recognizing that taxing the rich is not a good idea. We should tax the poor people, make them contribute, and let the rich people live in life and luxury. So if you win the lottery and you're very well done well financially, you deserve the life of luxury that you get. And for everybody else, it's poverty and squalor for them. Who cares?
Nick, I would like to ask
what
you
is-
a question, Nick. What about about the education and all the wonderful things that it brings? But there could be opinion that education is not good for the country because there will be much less people available to hire for minimum wages or close to it, and therefore the pool of available worker will shrink. And
You're
those
right,
people-
Sasha. Education is not good for the country because otherwise we can't get
No,
people to work
no,
from
no.
poverty and squalor. And
Hey, Nick and
financial
Sasha, hold on a second, because I
It's
mentioned
the
this
worst
earlier and
education.
everything. Hold on a second, because I mentioned this earlier. There is a small college, it's a very small college in Alabama, and it was on the verge of receiving a multi-million-dollar loan, but the state treasurer in Alabama balked, saying it was not a justifiable use of taxpayer money. So this small college, Birmingham Southern College there, was on the verge of possibly being rescued and all along those lines. But I guess their fine state government said, no, that's okay, because they were apparently in trouble. It's a private liberal arts college in Birmingham, and it has been plagued by financial instability for years, with the 2009 recession and the coronavirus pandemic definitely not helping the situation in terms of their future and all along those lines. But it sounds like they were about to be rescued, but I guess the fine folks there in Alabama were
Mark,
like, nah.
Quick question to you. So you're saying that they use taxpayers' money to do this gift to this institution. Now, imagine that this taxpayers' money were still in the hands of the taxpayers. Do you think all those taxpayers would elect to give this gift to the institution? Probably not. So
No.
essentially,
Just
what
to point out,
they are sitting on somebody else's money and playing with that as it's their own. But that's not the case. It's not really their money. They first expropriated this money from taxpayers, and then they decided, okay, why don't we do this or that or so on? That's a horrible thing, really.
but see, just to point out, taxes are, we can't do taxes a la carte, because say the taxpayers' money was still in their pocket. Are they really going to pay for the wars? Are they really going to pay for the military? Are they really going to pay for the
Different
roads?
story.
Are they
No,
really
no,
gonna
no.
pay-
It's different.
They won't.
There is a difference between war.
There's not a difference.
It's a
It's
huge
still
difference.
taxes. It's still taxes.
And apparently, by the way, this college used to be one of the most prominent liberal arts colleges. I know that Nick is not a big fan of liberal arts colleges in the area and everything, but apparently it was one of the most prominent one. And Daniel Coleman, the school's president and a former Wall Street executive who used to commute weekly to Chicago and New York from Birmingham, said if a state like Alabama loses Birmingham Southern, it's not good for anybody. So he's definitely trying to, I guess, lobby people to rescue this particular college.
Let it die. This is what capitalism is all about, Mark. Capitalism is about the survival of the fittest. It's Charles Darwin on steroids. It's Adam Smith's dream. Okay, so here you have a failing liberal arts institution. First of all, they're liberal arts, so it's stupid to begin with. Number two, it's failing. Strike two. Strike three, they want money from us. No way. So let it fail. Let it die. Darwin is correct. Goodbye, Charles Sutherland.
The opposite thing is that when businesses are failing, which was just happening a little while ago, when stock market is falling, when banks are failing, we seem to find the money from the taxpayers to support them. Same thing with the PPP loan. Same thing with all these other loans that we've done.
Absolutely
The
correct.
higher up seem to get that taxpayer money.
Said the business
But
of
the lower, and especially when it comes to a quote unquote woke college or a liberal college, they won't find the money there in a southern state that is diehard red, that is against anything quote unquote woke. So it's funny how you'll find the money for the business, and we can't let that fail, but we can let a college fail that's teaching woke ideology, even though they don't know what woke is.
But along those same lines, hold on a second. Along the same lines, I've got a question for everybody. Hold on a second. I got a question for everybody on the panel, because one thing that I know happens with these colleges, I mean, it would be an issue if, say, St. Augustine to fall, and there has been some problems around St. Augustine there in Raleigh, and I'm not wishing that they fall. I actually hope that they stick around, because they are definitely a long time HBCU and everything. But say they would to fall, what do you do with that land? Because apparently that's what the community leaders in Birmingham are worried about, because apparently that's going to be nearly 200 acres that'll be sitting empty in their midst and all along those lines. And I can only imagine what it would be like if St. Augustine fell, because that would be literally in the middle of our state capital and everything. So what do we do? And, even when the Olympics were held in Los Angeles and a number of other places, they sometimes repurpose some of those facilities, but some of them sat empty, and I think some of them are still sitting empty and all along those lines. But Rick, correct me if I'm wrong and everything. But
we got the Olympics again in 2028, so we'll open them up again. Then they can turn that's a third of a square mile, 220 acres, so they can turn that into an Amazon warehouse.
There we go. Thank you, Rick, for supporting corporate America. See, and Mark,
corporate America with the haves having
capitalism at its finest. Amazon, which is a well-managed, well-oiled machine, can take over these failing liberal woke universities and turn them into distribution centers. So we can distribute our books on Pod TV Store, which is now open on podtv.tv. So here we have beautiful capitalism working again, repositioning failing, woke, asleep universities and turning them into Amazon distribution centers.
You do somehow
have to get all these teachers and students will be employed by Amazon distribution centers. So at least they will bring some use to society. Okay.
Yes, the capitalism is working.
I love the fact that you said the woke colleges, we can wake them up from being asleep.
That's right. It's about time.
Tell me, because we've talked about it a number of times on this show and everything, but what exactly is the definition of woke and everything? Because like I said, I was part of a panel yesterday and everything, and there was somebody that actually countered one of the arguments that people use when they use woke and everything, because there was a famous book that some people like to use called The 1619 Project, and actually one of my fellow panelists actually said that is not going far enough back, because they actually made the argument that if we really want to go back in history, we need to go back to the 14th century, when certain Portuguese individuals were beginning the slave trade, and not necessarily in the year 1619. So they were actually going to go back even further than the woman that wrote 1619. I'm trying to think of her name. Went and everything. So they want to go further back.
No, maybe short cast.
Can I say one thing that you do have to somehow figure out a way to get money to poor people to make rich people richer. If poor people, who are most of the people, don't have any money to spend, then that's closes off a huge income stream for the rich.
I agree. Well, Henry Ford also agrees with you. He actually brought up his wages of his people that were working at Ford, because he needed somebody to buy his cars. So, again, this goes back to capitalism working. And, all the woke and communists and liberal arts schools, if they go down the toilet, good for capitalism. And then we could put up distribution centers. Maybe Joe Biden can put up his CHIPS Act. Remember, he's donating all that money to corporate America to make chip factory. So we can get rid of St. Augustine, get rid of this.
I was going to get to another issue that I mentioned at the beginning. I was going to get to another issue, and it actually comes back to the woke conversation, because apparently there is a litmus test that exists and everything, and apparently it exists maybe for the progressives, maybe for the conservatives, but apparently Mr. Fetterman is not happy, because he's saying that I am not a progressive, and apparently he was thinking that he didn't want to necessarily do the litmus test, because apparently there's a purity test on immigration policy and the border, and maybe even Israel and a number of other things as well. And I guess he was thinking that he did not necessarily pass this litmus test. So should there be a litmus test? And is there a litmus test for progressives and all along those lines?
We have a resident expert, Tovi, so let's bring in the president of the Progressive Party.
So just to point out, Even though I'm not president of the Progressive Party, I'm just me. I'm just an individual. I am just a unique person with a unique perspective. Just to point out, monopoly is actually is exactly the definition of capitalism on steroids. It is the game that everybody's played, and if you buy Boardwalk and you get Park Place, you get to bankrupt everybody else, and that's capitalism. In terms of woke, that's just about being aware of society itself and the things and the histrionics behind it. But then to get back with the litmus test, that's been there forever. Litmus test, I mean, the purity test about being on the Christian right, the purity test right now, the big purity test really isn't on the Progressive Party. It's dealing with Trump and the MAGA wing, because you literally, every candidate who was trying to get on the stage had to sign a pledge to vote for the winner of the actual primary. So that's a purity test within itself. So yeah, purity test has been around forever. I mean,
speaking of purity test, there's another thing that we talk about all the time on the news, and you knew it was going to come up on Christmas, and sure enough, it came up again. And this is this notion of gun control, because apparently in your state, Nick, a Florida teen allegedly shot and killed his sister over an argument over the Christmas gift. So apparently the teen brother was died and the sister is dead because apparently, I guess he wanted the gift that the sister got. I don't know what happened, but apparently they were not too happy with each other. And I'm sure that this will be raising the whole notion of gun control, because somehow maybe that was the gift. It was the gun for all I know and everything. But definitely they were arguing over the gun. And now I'm sure that this will be a topic around the need to protect ourselves. And in a similar situation, but slightly different, but it's also something we talk about as well. Hate crime charges were filed in a Christmas Day stabbing of some teen tourists that were eating at Grand Central and that whole area around, I believe that's New York City and everything. But teen tourists were stabbed by a deranged stranger at Grand Central who shouted, "I want all the white people dead," on Christmas, according to police.
That's just part of the fun of visiting New York City. Actually, New York's has pretty low crime rates, right? But there are more than 100 million more guns in America than there are Americans. So gun control is not going very well.
No, it won't, because we have this Second Amendment that protects everybody. So everybody can have a gun. If you don't like people, you just shoot them, I guess. That's the thing. But in terms of New York, yeah, I saw the stabbing. I was in New York about 2 weeks ago, Mark. And New York is a very safe place to be if you know what you're doing and go around Manhattan. I think it's a pretty cool place. And it's gotten safer every year. So it's not something that you have to worry so much about, because on a percentage of population, it's actually pretty small. But violence in America, that's just going to continue. It'll continue next year, the next year after, and frankly, it seems like we don't really care. So because we don't care, why do we even bother talking about it?
The solution for gun violence in America will take about 100 years, and it will be to make people bulletproof. You get shot, they put you in a brain scanner, they download your consciousness, and they put you in a robot body. Then everybody's okay.
Or the thing is, people will have bulletproof vests, basically, that cover their entire body.
Think about it. Think about how sad it is, though, that we could actually do something on gun control and regulations and everything else. But instead of doing anything proactive, we're doing things reactive to where, yes, we're going to, we can't do anything on guns. So what are we going to do? Give kids bulletproof vests or bulletproof backpacks, or tell kids that they have to. So it's just, it's ridiculous.
Or you make, Jatovia, you make a safe zone like we have in airports and courthouses. I mean,
how is that safe zone working for the migrants? Because apparently there is this whole caravan that is going from one state to the other and everything. And I guess the U.S. is going down there to encourage people to tighten up their own system of what they're doing with folks that are coming across the border and everything. But how is that working for the migrant population, these safe zones and everything, because there's a number of folks that are coming across, and some of them might even be carrying weapons, and some of them might be hiddenly members of the cartel for all we know and everything. But how is that working, and is Blinken going to be able to do anything when he goes down to Mexico as the migrant caravan moves toward the U.S. border? So apparently Blinken and Mayorkas is heading toward to press Mexican counterpoints to drive down border crossings as Biden faces increasing pressure.
Well, most of the migrants are coming to work. I don't get what the big deal is. I mean, the United States is built on immigrants. Sorry, that's just what we are. And for some reason, once you get here, it's your land and no one else can come in. Attitude is wrong. I mean, the thing is, the immigrants should come here. It's a way that we can actually rebuild and make America great again. Is to, as Reagan said, tear down that wall. Isn't that what Trump said? Tear down that wall. let these people in, because the thing is, what they want to do is go to work. And hard-earning capitalists like me, I don't want to work. I like to collect dividends and interest, which I told you, Toby. So what we can do is we can put them to work. I can collect the dividends interest, and everybody's happy. So
speaking of a hard-working capitalist. So I'm here to get to you, Rick, and everything. But speaking of a hardworking capitalist, apparently a hardworking capitalist is possibly getting ready to end his campaign, because apparently Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign has stopped all TV ads spending less than a month before Iowa and New Hampshire. So does this mean that this is the beginning of the end of the Vivek Ramaswamy campaign? Because apparently he's not going to do any more TV ads, and we're a month out from Iowa and New Hampshire.
People have to like you.
Politician anyway. So him leaving is a blessing to America. He obviously was able to screw a lot of people as a hard-earned capitalist and make a lot of money. He did really well in the tech sector. He needs to stay there. In terms of being a politician, he's a disgrace. So him folding up his tent and leaving is good for America. Again, capitalism working. Survival of the fittest. He is not fit for office. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's going to be down to Nikki Haley and Trump for the Republicans.
I would agree. It's going to be Nikki Haley or Trump. And, now the Koch brothers decide they're going to back Nikki Haley, and they have more billions than Trump, obviously. So we'll have to see where this thing goes. I mean, Trump thinks he's a shoo-in because he's leading in the polls, but that may not necessarily be true. The Republican hardliners may look at him again and say he's probably the only person Biden can beat is Trump. So if they put Nikki Haley would probably be the next president of the United States.
So I when I was yelling at Lance last night, I looked up the math. There are 600 million people in the Americas who live south of us. Mm-hmm. And, you like to blame Biden for the border situation. You can blame the crappy governments of that many of those 600 million people are under, driving them northward to America, which, though, we like to bitch about it, but it's still a shining beacon for the rest of the world.
You're right, Rick.
There's a mass migration.
Latin America, they have all these woke leaders who are asleep at the wheel. And what they do is they sit there and we're going to privatize assets. We're going to allow people to take over other people's properties. And by the way,
hold on a second, Nick. Latin America also have Brazil, which has a. Hold on a second, Nick. Doesn't Latin America also have Brazil, which has a leader that has been compared to being worse than Trump? Doesn't it also have Chile? Doesn't it also have a number of other countries that aren't exactly what you are defining as woke or even progressive?
But these are the people that are coming in. It's the people from Venezuela that are coming in.
No, you have
leadership. I mean,
you have a mass migration happening throughout South America and going through Mexico and all the other. I mean, it's just a travel north. What Rick points out is, yes, there's a lot of crime. There's some corruption there that they're all trying to escape from, as well as global warming or climate change, whichever one you want to say, because they're sitting at the equator and it's getting heated. So that's causing a lot of the mass migration as well. So there are a lot of problems that we really have to begin to look at, instead of doing what's been done for decades on decades on decades, of just using it as a political talking point. Even, I mean, Lee right now in the chat is going off on immigrants blindly, but not realizing that immigrants in the US have the lowest crime rate. Immigrants traveling throughout this migration are not criminals. What that belief comes from is all the right-wing media that demonizes and says all these nasty things towards immigrants that he blindly believes. But we have to reach into Nick's realm and actually fund more lawyers, judges, and everything to process these individuals that are coming to the border. We have to spread it across the border, because there was a report where they talked about somewhere on the Rio Grande where immigrants were trying to cross, and it's not considered a border crossing area. But if that's where they're going, let's take some people down there to begin processing them, instead of just, hey, we're going to throw them in jail, because that's not really helping anything but just packing them.
I agree with you, Jacoby. We could have a very simple process. Okay. Number one, are you a criminal? Check the box, no. Good. Number two, are you willing to work hard to support our capitalists in the United States? They go, yes, I work hard to support capitalism in the United States. Great. Check the box too. Box number three, are you willing to vote Republican? Yes, I am. Check box Republican. Let them in. Then let them in. Baby.
Hold on a second. I got to go back to your question number one. I got to go back to question number one. What criminal in their right mind is going to actually write down that they are a criminal? So that's what I want to know, is what criminal in their right mind is actually going to check that they are a criminal?
LA has a lot.
You just ask the question. That's what you do. They do at the border anyway. Mark,
LA has
I'm a criminal. I'm willing to work hard to support capitalism and capitalists like me, and they vote Republican. Let these people in.
LA has a ton of undocumented
cartel and members of other groups actually answer yes.
So LA has a bunch of undocumented folks, and they're the ones who drive 10 miles under the speed limit on the freeway. They keep their head down. They don't want any contact with law enforcement. They come here to work. But if we want to fix immigration, then we need to buy Mexico, because we have a 2,000-mile border with Mexico. If we turn Mexico into the part of the U.S., Mexico has a 50-mile border with its southern neighbor. We could build a big 300-foot wall across 50 miles and solve immigration.
Hey, Rick, didn't we try that back 200 years ago? I think it was called the War of 1812. That didn't work out that well for us, I don't think.
Yeah, but
we took over half of Mexico.
we unify with them. All of North America should be one country. We want Canada because climate change is going to make Canada very desirable. They have fewer people in Canada than we do in California. We want that land, and we want the teeny southern border that Mexico has. So we just need to turn into Mexicanata America.
We're going down all the way to Brazil and Argentina and a number of other countries. How far are we taking this? Because I know that on past shows, Nick has basically said that we should take over the entire world. I've heard Nick say this a couple of times and everything. So how far is this, North America, South America alliance going to go? Is it just going to be Mexico and Canada, or are we going to expand even further to the
just
South?
Push? We should not with guns and stuff, but with money. We should just buy a 5-mile strip of Mexico every year and just push and push and push and push. And yeah, keep going.
The thing is, though, again, if we're going to fix that border, we've got to, again, push more people into the immigration law so you can process people, do your background checks, because that's all they do. All the people coming across, you do a background check on, and then boom, that's it. But
we have all this new technology. The CHIPS Act, there should be another CHIPS Act where somebody wants to come to America, we put a chip in them so we can keep track of where they are. So
that's Logan's run.
We're going to get to a very serious topic with Sasha, and on a more lighter note, just really quickly, and everything before I get to a more serious conversation. Could any of us have survived in a car for 6 days? Because that was one of the kind of interesting stories that I put out there. Because apparently the person was rescued after having been in that car for 6 days, and a Good Samaritan came and rescued them, and all along those lines. So I just wanted to know if anybody here could have survived in their car for 6 days if the car was crushed, because apparently the car was also.
I could, because my wife, it used to be her car, and she's very concerned about earthquakes. So she filled the whole trunk with just emergency food, like weeks of emergency food. And then I got a flat tire and I had to clean out the trunk. And so I have a bunch of very stale emergency food in my back seat.
So I think you could survive. Maybe Sasha could survive it. I'm sure Nick can survive just about anything and all along those lines. Like I said, just was curious. But Sasha, just really quickly, because apparently I know you've mentioned Qatar and other places that maybe some of the members of Hamas are at, but apparently Biden is speaking with the Qatari emir to discuss hostage release and ceasefire efforts. So is anything going to come out of these conversations with Biden and the Qatar emir? And are we going to finally see the release of hostages and a ceasefire in Gaza? Or is this a like tilting at windmills and a fool's errand in the sense of trying to get this to happen anytime soon? So is Qatar going to help in this situation? Your thoughts?
It's not a question of Qatar. It's a question of Biden. If he really needs to reclaim his presidency for another 4 years, if so, then he doesn't need all the slow, little pace movements, release hostages, to do some ceasefire here and there, or so on. He needs to go full-scale war against Iran and all its proxies, and decisively defeat all of them. And he has the power, he has all opportunities to do so. And then his rating would be elevated and he would have a pretty good chance to win the election. I don't know, well, at his age, maybe he doesn't see it clearly. And his advisors probably are unable to explain it to him, or maybe they don't understand themselves the issue. So I really don't know. They have all the firepower that probably the strongest in the world right there. The avia groups and just name it. How much power you need to defeat all these backward countries? I mean, could be done in a matter of probably a week and a half. So I don't know really what he's all about.
Hey, Rick, I know yesterday on the show that you taped, and we taped it earlier this morning and everything, your partner in crime is of the opinion, I've heard other people say this as well, that Biden is dead in the water and that we are stuck with a Trump re-election and all along those lines. So what do you say to those folks that are looking at those numbers? Because Biden's numbers are...
I'll tell you what I told Lance, which is I'm putting my money where my opinion is, which is for every buck you bet on Biden getting reelected, you get that dollar back plus another $2. Now, Biden's not a shoo-in, but he's certainly he has more than a 1/3 chance of getting elected. And as I keep saying, I think polls get increasingly crappy because it's increasingly hard to get non-lunatics to sit down, to cold call, say, hello, would you like to participate in a poll? Most people don't even answer that call. And so the person who does might be a lunatic and they pollute the results. And plus it's still, the election is still 315 days away. Most Americans haven't seriously considered what they're going to do yet. And I'm going to keep betting on Biden. Not because I think he's 100% shoo-in, but you get good odds on him.
What do you think, Jacoby? Because there are a lot of people that are thinking that Biden is dead in the water and that it's a lost cause and that we might be stuck with a Trump re-election. So what is your thoughts around that?
I mean, right now it's tough, and Rick is right. The way the actual polls are done at this moment, you can't really trust them. Plus, there are a lot of things coming down the pipe. I mean, you have not only Trump saying all the craziness that he did on Christmas, but then you also have the other decisions that are coming down the pipe with the abortion decisions, dealing with how if people are going to be denied access to pills, the abortion pill, which the abortion pill is also used for other medical conditions besides just an abortion. So are you going to deny women access to even more health care? So that's going to be a big play. You've also got the big play with Trump's court cases. I mean, there's just some other things that are kind of come into play that we don't know yet. And that won't start until next year. And then right now with the primaries, there was somebody who pointed out, which is a true fact, they're playing to the primary candidate or their primary base right now. And how will that transfer, or how will that relate to the general population? I mean, honestly, yeah, he has the best chance or opportunity to beat Biden. Trump, based on what he's saying, that could deter a lot of people. I mean, yes, it's a lot of people dislike Biden, but Trump has really gone down the deep end and keeping his base, and I don't know if he's expanded his base or not. But yeah, right now it's too early to tell in the polls. I would have liked the Democrat Party to go with somebody else besides Biden, because again, there are things that he can get over. The economy talking point he can get the women's healthcare issue, and women's choice. That is something that's going to help him. The economy, all the other stuff. But the problem he can't get over is his age, and that's never going to change. And if people keep seeing him as old, it's going to be hard to get over that.
Yeah, Biden looks like crap. He's got resting old face. But the Pew Research about 8 years ago did a study that had found out over the previous 2 decades, Republican politicians had moved 4 times as far to the right as Democrats had moved to the left. And since then we've had 8 more years of increasing Republican extremism, which opens up a huge middle for the Democrats to go after. But since it's such a wide swath, you have people to the right of Biden bitching about Biden. You have people to the left of Biden. But you have a bunch of like disgruntled people in the middle and on the left. But there's more of them to pick up when they eventually just kind of have to make a choice. And we can hope for that, because Trump just sounds crazier and crazier, sending out a Merry Christmas tweet, but if you don't like me, rot in hell.
Well, along those same lines, how much should we be concerned, because we're going to get to another issue around mental health, because it's something we've talked about on this show and on this network a number of times. And apparently there was a Hawaii influencer. I'm worried about you, Rick, because I know you're an influencer as well as you, as also Jacoby, because apparently she was shot dead by her husband in front of their children or her child and all along those lines. And definitely he then committed suicide. So a number of people are wondering about social media influencers, but also just the state of our mental health and mental health community and everything along those lines. So if I hear about something happening in California with an influencer, I might be worried about you, Rick, because I know that you.
It's a worry because America is a big frickin' country. If you took only the 1% craziest people in the U.S., that's over 3 million people. And the top 1/10 of 1% craziest people in America, that's 30,000 people. And some of those people do, scary stuff.
I mean, think of it even worse. Our mental health as a country is, really bad. And again, we have had issues. He wasn't the one who created the issues. He created some, but he gave a megaphone to causing problems with our mental health. And yes, that is Trump. Because if you look at right now, the leading candidate for president telling people to rot in hell, quoting Hitler during the middle of a war in Israel. And so you have, and he's also retweeting, retweeting white supremacists, doing all this other stuff. He's a hateful dude, but half of the country wants him because they like that. They've justified everything. I mean, when he quoted Hitler, because before they said, oh, well, he tells it like it is. Well, he quotes Hitler. He didn't mean to say that. He was really saying, so now you're just making up crap in your mind to justify the hatefulness this man is spewing, which, as much as, you know, yes, you have influencers on Twitter, you have influencers on Facebook, to YouTubes and TikTok. The president still, and even prior presidents, still set a tone in our society. And the tone that this man has set is really, really hurting our mental health. But people don't want to accept that because they're justifying his hateful speech, his hateful words. They're okay with him yelling out rotten hell. This person would not be accepted as a teacher. This person would not be even a friend. You would beat your kid. Well, not really beat your kid. That's horrible to say. But you would punish your child just for saying half of the stuff this man says. But you're allowed.
Years ago, the Soviet premier Nikita Khrushchev said, "We will defeat you without firing a shot." And, you know, they didn't. The Soviet Union fell apart. But Russia is still using their techniques, but turbocharged. Russia loves Americans and other Western democracies being chaotic with people just hugely pissed at each other. They spend tens of millions of dollars a year, and it's cheap to do this, flooding social media with angry messages to keep us at each other's throats.
But along the same lines, and this is for Sasha and everything, apparently Russia has warned Japan, like Japan's really going to listen, over providing Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. So is this another tactic, or is Russia trying to divide the West and all along those lines? And like I'm not thinking that Japan's really going to be listening, because they know that Russia is in the midst of this war with Ukraine, and it doesn't seem to be always going as strong as definitely Russia would probably like, even though you'd be interested to know, and you need to go back and watch the show, that I think Rick's cohort actually thinks that Russia is winning the war. And you can correct me.
Well, no, he thinks it's a stalemate, that it's just going to stay the way it is, and that Ukraine should negotiate to stop the war. At its peak, Russia had 24.8% of Ukraine. Now it's down to 17% for the past couple months. Now, Sasha knows better than me. It's been kind of stalemated, but it's not a lost cause where they should just say, okay, yeah, take 1/6 of our country.
It's not really stalemated. If you will take a fact that there is no day in the last several weeks, probably even couple of months, have to look it up, that Russia would lose less than 1,000 soldiers a day. So every day Russia is losing 1,000 plus. It could be 1,025, it could be 1,027, it could be 1,058. It doesn't matter, but it's always slightly over 1,000. Tell this people who are being killed that it's a stalemate, or their families, or their wives, their mothers and sisters and whoever. Tell them, what, there is a stalemate. So where's my husband? Well, he's part of a stalemate. Wonderful, great. Russia so far lost 330 people, and it's growing. Ukrainians will never accept any peace with Russia. They will keep exterminating. They're not taking prisoners. They're exterminating as many Russians as they have. Now talk about peace.
Well, check this out. This is where it gets back to Nick's favorite topic of capitalism. Think about it. Right now, Elon Musk has a ton of power within the U.S. government, not only with the satellite, with the Starlink, which gave internet to Ukraine, not only with the SpaceX, which has taken over a lot of the space travel from NASA, not only with the electric grid that they're building to help out EV vehicles, but a ton more things that this capitalist has now invested into the government. which also gives him a big say on what goes in the Ukraine-Russia war, because Elon is now friendly with Putin. That is where we come back to make it a full circle.
So in the Vietnam War, America lost.
There you go. The evil,
The-
the face of all evil of humanity today, Elon Musk. You know, he is Satan, worshiper of all Satans. You know, we should destroy him because of all the technology he's building. You know, I want people to think about how history has taught us all of the things that our government and leaders guide us into. That is truly a smokescreen for other things that are going on. So just open your eyes a little bit more rather than looking at all the hate and disgruntled that you're spewing and raging right now about the wars. Look at behind the screen of what's really going on and why they want you focused on that, because they know that simple-minded civilians will focus on all of this other bull crap rather than the agenda that they're truly trying to achieve. Okay. And, you know, I don't want anyone else to die. And I think if people are doing this in the name of their God, then they need to look at what God they're doing this in, because to me, killing people like this in mass amounts is the work of Satan. It is not the work of your God. It is not the work of defending your people, because you're not defending your people anymore with the continuance of the war. You've made your point. You know, blowing up churches is not killing people. Blowing up the people you don't like or the people who don't follow your faith. Okay, attacking people like this needs to stop. And we need to end it now. And I also want to recognize, you know, because I've had a lot of people, you know, accuse me or people like me of being against Jews. I am not. I'm against all killing of all people. And if you want to solve this anti-Semitic issues and solve the problem, find out why people fear you enough to hate you, to do the things they do. Learn about what and why. Learn them and understand why this hate evolves, because all you're doing is spewing rage and hate back and forth like a continued war, just like Israel and Gaza. Okay. And you need to solve the root of the problem, not continue the problem by pointing fingers and pointing blame and spreading fear and spreading propaganda. There's enough of that. And I want to recognize the few people who stood up for the Jewish, gave up their lives, gave their heads, trying to make people aware of the problem. The children of the White Rose Resistance. And they gave their lives. And nowhere do I ever hear anyone say, these people gave up their lives for us. All I hear is you don't care about us. And that's not true. That is not true. But the way to fix the problem is to answer the questions. And that's what we need to do in this country so that we can stop the leaders from manipulating us and hating each other so that we can unite again. Because I'm going to tell you what, we were all united a whole heck of a lot better after 9/11 and during COVID. People stopped stealing and killing each other during COVID. Okay. That was God's way to say, hey, wake up. Wake up. You can get along. You just can't be together. Maybe that was God's way of doing that. But use your words, not your hate.
So Netanyahu, in a lot of ways, is Israel's Trump, and he's going to keep bringing the hammer down because he thinks that's his path to political survival.
He's spreading hate and propaganda.
But I want to get back to Ukraine. In 10 years in Vietnam, we lost 50,000 Americans. 20 years in Afghanistan, 4,000. With what Sasha's saying, Russia loses 4,000 people in half a week. They lose 50,000 people in a month and a half in a country that's only half our population. So that can't continue indefinitely. I mean, it could, but it'll cost Russia 1/3 of a million people dead troops a year.
Sorry, I wanted to say that it's even worse than what you just said. Remember that after Second World War, the Russian population, the equilibrium between men and females, was 60% of population were females and 40% men. Of this 40%, half of them are drunk, another half are impotents, and there is, frankly, very little biological mass that is good for anything. Now, this proportion will be even worse after the Ukrainian war will be over. Depends when it will be over, but believe me that it will be 70% of females for 30% of males. Absolutely useless in any normal sense of that word.
That's right. We're
So
useless.
this opens doors for China. So actually, Chinese men are coming at premium. Any Russian woman is jumping to marry a Chinese man because he doesn't drink. He eats only one bowl of rice a day. He's working 16 hours a day, no problem. And he's very useful for family life, unlike Russian drunks. So this is the future of Russia. It will be completely colonized by China. China doesn't need any war against Russia. They will just, in a few years' time, they will have a referendum. Such places like Siberia, they will vote 90% to join China, and that will be the end of Russia. Adam, are you there?
Oh, he's appearing by.
He's appearing virtually.
He's
Oh,
dropping
Here
in
by
messages.
viewer.
He's a ghost. He's a ghost that's out there appearing every now and then.
So if he wants to go to Russia in the next few years, he might as well travel to China. It will be more use.
Hey, just really quickly, because I just had to look it up because you say some things that I always find interesting, Sasha. But apparently there have been several studies that says that there has been a striking increase in alcohol consumption and related problems in China. So China has 22% of the world's population, and apparently they have had a rise in folks that are drinking there in China as well. So it is not just a Western problem. So I don't know that they're just all living off of rice and things along those lines, because apparently some of them might be getting some sake, or I think that's a Japanese liquor and everything, but they might be getting some other kinds of drinks as well. So apparently it is a problem even in China as well.
There you go. It's a problem. And we're at the top of the hour, and we need to say thank you very much for watching us and providing us your views. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Mark, take it away. Oh, and don't forget to shop our news store on podtv.tv, where you can buy great and wonderful books that were written by some of the people we've interviewed, or by some of the people who are on our show, like Rick Rosner. We have a story about Rick in our bookstore.
My books, like, these are, a guy interviews me and then it gets transcribed by ChatGPT. So they're pretty sloppy books. You should wait till my novel comes out, which will be written.
Well, we will, and we'll promote it.
We'll promote the novel as well and everything in the other.
But I just think it's great your face is on a book, and I saw it and recognized it. And I want to thank you for all the things that you do for us. And Sasha, you too. I'm looking for your book.
Happy to be
And
here.
to Toby, I expect a book about what you do with the hurricanes and the Durham Bulls. I love it. But thank you, everyone. And let's move forward with these amazing conversations. Maybe we will find some solutions to walk into 2024 with, so that we can make this a more peaceful, safer world to not only live in, but visit each other. Have a great day.
Sounds good.